WMNH. Rip the knob off.
Welcome back, everybody. We have entered hour number 3, Numero Trace of Matt Connerton Unleashed, and we are live from the studios of WMNH 95.3 FM in glorious Manchester, New Hampshire. Today is Saturday, September 28, 2024. Jenny is here, of course, at the news table.
Present and accounted for.
And joining us in the studio this morning, we have, making her third appearance, as we figured out, on the program, Dr. Bethany Bilodeau is here. Welcome back.
Woohoo! Thanks so much. I'm so happy to be here. I'm shooting for the 5.
Yes.
5 times.
You get to that 5-timers club. You get what do we give guests who we can't afford to give them
a hand clap,
a jacket. We'll give a hand clap.
Standing ovation.
I think
our undying gratitude.
I think we should do 5 hand claps when that happens.
You're pushing it.
Well, I just think that
Come on now.
It's 5. Should get 5 hand claps.
All right, I kind of see your point there. That does make sense.
And they should be enthusiastic.
Do you give them an extra one for good luck?
No.
Oh. Well, how's that supposed to work?
Is there rules?
Well, no, I don't like rules.
Give somebody an extra hand clap? That's absurd.
Breaking the law. Breaking the law.
Figure it out, Jenny. You can figure a way around it.
She will, too.
That's right.
Don't tell me no.
So sneak one in.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, boy, I'll tell you. Dr. B, you, congratulations, first of all. You just won yet another award.
I did. I didn't even know we were nominated for it, but we did win
really?
another award.
Oh, that's the best.
Yeah.
That happened to Jenny and I once. Remember when we got a certificate?
That is awesome when it happens because it's like, surprise, you got this and you didn't even expect it. Pat on the back.
Yeah.
I put mine on the wall.
Jenny and I got an award once emailed to us from somebody, like a great broadcaster award or something.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I got one on the wall from like that.
Did you frame yours?
I did.
Yes.
Go, girl.
It's on my wall.
Mine's in my email still. It was this kind of random thing.
You should see my walls.
Yes, she does.
You could use them as wallpaper.
She does. She has many awards. But you have many awards. How many awards have you won now?
I honestly don't know.
Yeah, that's a good.
See, now that's a good problem to have.
That's a good
like,
problem
I
to
have.
have.
No clue.
Most of the awards are like, yay, nice job, Dr. B. You came in first for the best costume on Halloween at that elementary school that you worked at that day.
Oh.
Or you ran the fastest to get in front of that kid or something like that.
Right.
Those kind of awards.
Right. An award's an award.
You're right. I like those awards the best, though, to be honest.
Well, tell us about this newest one. And you said you didn't know you were even nominated.
I didn't know. It's on social equity, this one. So it's for a leader in the field that has really promoted social equity for both their customers as well as their employees and has improved quality of life and those sorts of things. So,
okay.
So it'll be great. We're going to the awards ceremony in a couple of weeks, and a lot of our employees are attending it with us, and which will be really awesome. We're looking forward to that.
Yeah.
It'll be a neat experience for us all.
Now, who awarded you the award?
It's Business New Hampshire, I believe.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
So talk to us about social equity. So what does this mean, and why are they giving you this award?
So a big part of it is really about, as you know, we work with at-risk youth, and for the listeners that are on that don't know that, we work with youth that are really marginalized, and we tend to run large alternative education programs within school districts, or we come into school districts and we train them on how to work with particular students that may be struggling. And because of that, our goal is always to increase their social value. So we spend a lot of time helping to facilitate peer relationships, helping to establish healthier relationships between them and the adults that they're working with, within their schools and within their communities, and really improve their social value over time. So that's very relevant. And oftentimes these kids are reintegrated most of the time, more than 85% of the time. These students are reintegrated back into their general education setting and into their communities. And oftentimes these are students that haven't had that luxury of participating in a general education setting in years by the time they get to us.
Yeah.
So it's really about getting them back to where they can be and have connections, because that's such a huge factor in quality of life.
Right. Absolutely. By the way, Sarah Patno is in the chat room and says, let's go for 10.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. It's going to take a little time.
Thanks, Sarah. You're always back pushing us all.
and then you'll get 10 claps. It'll be great.
Why not 11 for good luck?
That's right.
Oh, man.
You don't do that. What
Stingy.
tell us. I know you don't want to brag, but you should. Tell us about the other awards that you've won.
So we won just recently, about 5 or 6 months ago. We also won an award in education. So for people who have made significant contributions and changes in the world of education,
Yeah.
and that's again, due to our work with at-risk youth and reintegrating students into the general education setting. And our goal is always to get into a school, give them the skills, teach them what they need to know, and then get out.
Mm-hmm.
And we spend a lot of time coaching families too, a significant amount of time actually coaching families.
Okay.
And that makes a huge difference. Like it's just such a great thing when you have parents say, "Well, teach us something. We want to." And
Right.
oftentimes they do. They've tried everything they know. It's just a matter of youth are different today. We're different today. There's so many changes that have happened in the past 5 to 10 years, and the strategies that we used 10, 20 years ago don't necessarily work.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a matter of just having better strategies that address the actual issues that are going on.
Right.
And most of the time it really stems down to safety, feeling
Mm-hmm.
safe, feeling regulated. If you don't feel safe, you're not going to take a risk.
Yeah.
And so many things in life involve us taking a risk.
Yeah.
So.
I'm curious. I don't know if we talked about this much before. Something specific you mentioned about strategies that worked 10 or 20 years ago that don't necessarily work now. Like, can you give us some examples of like what used to work that doesn't work now and maybe why?
Yeah,
Those sort of things don't?
compliance, that's a big one that doesn't work nowadays. Like, back 20 years ago, you could say, well, if you don't do this, you're going to get in trouble. We're going to either call the police or get the principal in here or tell your parents or something like that. And there's no fear of that nowadays. There really isn't. And the fear is really, I have to live my life. I've got to be able to post something on social media that one of my other peers is going to think is cool. Otherwise, I have no social value. It's going to reduce me. Those are really the concerns that youth are having today, much more so than, an authority figure coming in and providing something, because they know that there's no real power behind that.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that is not a concern. Like, I'll always tell schools, they'll be like, oh, this is happening. We're going to call the police. And I'll be like, just give me a few minutes and let me see if I can, get this situation turned around before we go down that road. Because once you call the police once or twice, that's it.
Right.
The next time they come in, they're going to be, hey, what's up?
Right.
To the officers. So, don't use that as a threat, because it's really not a threat at this point.
But why did that used to work?
I think because we did have that concern and that fear. The way we were raised created that. I think kids are much more knowledgeable about those things nowadays. They're much more desensitized to it because they're so overexposed to so many things.
Yeah.
And they also know what the results of it are. They know if a police officer comes in, what they can do, what they can't do. And they didn't have that awareness 10 or 20 years ago. They're very overstimulated, oversaturated to things that are going on in their world. And that's made a huge difference in how they interact.
Yeah.
They feel on edge, a little fearful all the time. But most people do. I will say that that's true of most individuals, not just youth. And so feeling safe enough to be able to do something that's a little different or out of their comfort zone, it takes a big step. So you've got to get them to feel safe first and then give them some strategies to help them regulate and that sort of thing. So many of us are like, we're constantly looking for something else to do or something to get upset over because we're so used to feeling that way. We've been conditioned to feel that way so much of the time that sometimes when we don't feel that way, it feels almost boring. It's not engaging enough for the brain. So, teaching yourself that there's good things in the calmness, that your body has time to heal. You have time to, get yourself into a better state of mind and everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Elizabeth England in the Facebook live chat says, and social media wasn't so important. Yeah, I mean, 20 years ago we didn't even have. Well, I don't know. I guess we did 20 years ago, right? We had MySpace.
Yeah, I don't
that was
know
about
how
it.
many people were really on social media though, or paying as close attention to it now as they did it, back in 20 years ago versus now. I mean, now it's a huge thing, especially if I'm with kids. They have, in schools they're a little bit more careful about the phones, but if I'm in their homes, they have no qualms in the middle of talking with me, taking it out and checking something on their phone or
Right.
texting someone or
Wow.
doing a Snapchat real quick or something like that. It's just commonplace.
Yeah.
And it is how they interact with each other nowadays. If you look
Yeah.
at teens, they are all sitting together, but they're not really talking to each other, and they're all got their phones out,
Mm-hmm.
and they're, communicating through that. And they're reading each other's Snapchat. They're like, the Snapchat, the picture's coming up, and they're looking at it, and it's their friend that's sitting 2 seats down.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. Our friend Ricky Mapleton, who's very funny. He does. He's a musician, but he does these comedy songs, and he has one. We played it on the show. It's got a long title, something like "Shoot me an email while I'm standing right in front of you," and it's about that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
What do you do? So how do you? And this might be useful for parents or anyone who's dealing with kids. Well, hopefully this entire conversation is, but something specific I'm wondering about. So what do you do? How do you address that when that exact scenario, you're talking to a kid and right in the middle of the conversation, they just, which to me seems, I mean, how rude, right? But to them, it's like, I guess some of them, they just don't even.
It's part of the social
it's just so
norm.
normal.
It is part of the social norm of what's going on today.
Yeah.
So for me personally, I just try to be way more engaging than what's going on their device. So that oftentimes means that I'm either acting things out, or I'm using silly voices, or I'm doing whatever, or I'm saying something shocking, or whatever it is. But
Yeah.
my role is really to engage.
Yeah.
So because if I can't engage, I can't change behavior. So I spend a lot of time trying to do something that is a little bit out of the ordinary to get their attention. And oftentimes I'm so focused on them and giving them so much feedback that they're almost uncomfortable taking it out at times.
Oh,
Like,
really?
Like,
Yeah.
they'll take it out, but they'll be like, well, I'm just doing this. And I'll be like, oh, show me. I want to see. Blah, blah, blah. I don't know anything about social media. Show me how to do that. And then they'll be like, okay, this is now a lesson for you.
Yeah.
And I try to engage them with the item if I can't engage them in another way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also recommend to parents a lot, like, have your kids take social media breaks and do the same.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys are going away for a day or, a weekend or something, take a break, to leave your phones at home or use it only at specific times, do things like that, because that will really help all of you interact on a much larger level and have some conversations that are more in-depth and fun conversations about things you want. Like with my daughters, I'll be like, a perfect Saturday. Tell me what a perfect Saturday would be. My 11-year-old would say, you take me shopping and then for ice cream. And we do all these fabulous things. But,
Right.
so just doing things like that where you're getting to know them a little bit better
Yeah.
makes a huge difference. But my boys are adults now, but I used to ask my boys to take social media vacations and stuff like that. And they would actually take the social media platforms off their phones. Like they would delete them
Oh, wow.
accounts for periods of time.
Oh.
And everything. Usually it was as a result of doing something on social media that wasn't fabulous.
Right.
But we would get to know each other so much better during that time period when they didn't have it on their phones because they didn't really have the desire to text and do that sort of thing. That's not how youth communicate now. It's usually through Snapchat or Instagram or something.
Yeah.
So they would, have conversations. Oh, lo and behold.
Yeah. How big of a problem is this in schools? Because something that I wonder about is how do schools even? I guess every school system must have their own sets of policies.
And it's a little different on how they deal with it. Yeah.
I mean, I've heard of schools where they have this, like, where the students walk in and they actually take their phones away. They put them in some sort of lockbox until the end of the day or something.
Yeah. There are some schools that have done that too, and there's a lot of schools that have worked really hard to get responsible use. And if that's violated, then there's consequences for the violations and so on and so forth. The problem with the phones is that it really, on a brain level, when you're looking at the brain, it wears out the dopamine receptors. So then you're checking it more often. Dopamine kick, you're doing it, and then you're like, I can't get that feedback from it. So then they're looking up more and more shocking things over time.
Yeah.
And it's just pushing them to have more and more of that intense feedback, which isn't real life a lot of the time.
Yeah. If you are just joining us, we're talking with Dr. Bethany Bilodeau. Dr. B, as she is she likes to be called, from of course the Behavior Boot Camp, and we're just going to take a very quick break. I'm actually going to have I'm going to play a little something, and we're going to have you switch to a different microphone because that microphone isn't sounding quite right. and I want to make sure everyone can hear you. So it's not bad.
It's probably user error. I guarantee it. Me with technology, I guarantee it's me.
It's not you. I promise. But we'll be right back. We're going to play a little Jam Tomorrow, and we'll be right back with Dr. B.
It's the end of the Red Queen's race, and I feel like the stars are gonna change, because I feel like this was all just rearranged. As we move from hugs and handshakes, we must remember how our souls ache. As we move from confidant to confident, we must remember how our souls pay rent. But I feel like things are falling into place, and I feel...
All right, that's a little bit of Jam Tomorrow falling into place. Such a great song. We'll play the whole thing at the end of the show, I promise. I love that song so much, but... we just wanted to switch our guests to a different microphone. So if you are just joining us here on Matt Connerton Unleashed this morning, we have Dr. Bethany Bilodeau with us live in studio. And let's bring that mic up, and let's see how we do. Hello, Dr. B.
Hey, how are you?
Oh, that sounds better already. I just got to boost the volume a little bit.
So Matt said that this microphone never goes down, and... You know, those of you that know me and have been at trainings of mine, you know that's the technology curse with me.
Right. Really? Have you had technical glitches over the years?
Everywhere I go. I will say, shout out to Bow School District. Whenever I train in Bow School District, all the technology always works perfectly.
Really?
In any
That's
other
good.
district I train in, pretty much, there's usually some glitch.
Wow,
during the course of the time.
Shout out to Bow School District then. That's excellent. That's excellent. So if you could talk a little bit about the Behavior Boot Camp. Obviously, you know, as we said, this is your third time on the show, but for listeners who are just getting to know you for the first time, what is this?
So the Behavior Boot Camp is really our online platform. We have a course, an online course that's also live. We hold weekly sessions as well through the course, but it's a training program that teaches people how to understand and how to teach and how to recognize when safety is a concern, how regulation is a concern, and those strategies, and then a lot of higher skills. Like, you can't get to the therapeutic parts, you can't get to the mindfulness, you can't get to the meditation, you can't get to all of those social emotional learning, all those other pieces until you can address safety and regulation first. So that course teaches it, and it's really simple things like how you're standing, the way you tilt your head, how you're moving into the space with another person so that they feel safe, and how to do those things. And whenever I walk into a school and they'll say, oh, you know, there's a meltdown going on, they'll say, Dr. B, you know, can you hear that? Absolutely. And I go outside, and within 2 seconds, the kid's coming in that was taking off into the woods or whatever, and they're like, what is this? It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
It's simple techniques that can be taught. And we really developed this online course because we had a lot of places outside of New England contacting us for support that we really couldn't address the need. And we couldn't address the need of as many school districts that were asking for the support in these alternative ed programs in their schools because of the number of staff that we have.
Yeah.
And there were so many parents that were calling, and I'm trying to talk them through on the phone how to do a technique.
Yeah.
That I was like, we need something where people can see it.
Right.
So oftentimes if we're working with families, we're, giving them a membership to the course and that sort of thing so they can learn the skills, so they can see all these techniques and everything else. So,
Yeah.
and we operate on that through social media too. We put out little clips every few days on social media that show different techniques and all of that, because we really feel like we're doing something that's very unique. I've only met a couple of other professionals in the nation that do similar work, and they're shows. So we really feel obligated to give these strategies and techniques to the community at large, because a lot of people don't know them, and they are very different from traditional techniques that were used. And traditional techniques can still work, but they only work with about 30% of the population at this point.
Okay. So there's nobody else really doing this on this level.
No, I know an occupational therapist that does somewhat similar work with her students in Massachusetts. And then there's a woman over in California that actually two women who do similar work. But again, it's a one-on-one situation. And one of them's a therapist and the other one is a behaviorist, but she only teaches it through yoga techniques. And that's not what we do. Ours encompasses so much more than just physical maneuvers with the body and everything else. We do a lot that deals with the mind and brain health and mental health and everything else. So our strategies are really proprietary to what we do and how we work with students, but it's how we get results so fast.
We do have a question in the chat room. Angela Griffiths Carter says, "How are the book Ease the Pain in the Classroom and the Yoga Boot Camp related?"
Well, the book, actually, I wrote the book, which is coming out in 2025.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Very
so
cool.
that book will be released in 2025, and I wrote that book as a supplement to the course itself, because there's a lot of educators that say, I don't have time to go through the videos on the course. I don't have time to attend the classes, the live classes that you guys hold. So what are my other options? So we certainly don't have as much content in the book as we have in the online course, but the book itself is about 60,000 words, which is it's dense.
Yeah.
It's an educator's tool to use in the classroom on new strategies on classroom management. So the book is actually Ease the Pain, a guide to safety and regulation in the classroom, so educators can teach.
Are you self-publishing or going through a publisher?
We have a few options. We don't have a publisher, but we may end up going the self-publishing route, because there's a few things that I want to be able to do with the book that we may not be able to do with a publisher. So we're going to make that decision at the end of November. We'll make that decision.
Yeah.
So
developing that course must have been quite the undertaking, right?
It was fun, yeah. I mean, I love to write curriculum, and I write a lot of curriculum. I've written a lot of curriculum for years and years for different organizations and for for different things that I train on and everything. So I love to write curriculum. So I basically just sat down and wrote it in modules of everything people need to know for, to address safety issues. If your kid's having a tantrum, what do you do? Well, here's how you determine why they're having the tantrum, and they may know right off the bat.
Right.
Yes, they're having the tantrum because I didn't give them a candy bar, and or whatever it may be. But it talks about how to get them to a point of safety, and then it has all the components on regulation. And in the online course, we have tons of information on nutrition and on different things that you can do as far as supplementation, brain issues. A lot of people don't realize how many things impact the brain and what's going on with those components. I'll meet a youth that's like really irritable, and they'll be like, I don't like this certain kid. And I'll say, oh yeah, why? Well, 2 years ago on the bus, he tripped me and so on and so forth. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're operating in the limbic part of your brain, kiddo. Okay, so here's what we need to do. You need more high-intensity movement. You need to, we need to really look at having more of a higher protein diet, lower carbs. So we're going to encourage you to eat that when you're at school and those sorts of things. But there's some very specific things you can do to support the limbic part of the brain. And really what that means is the limbic's getting all the blood flow. Nothing else is getting the blood flow. So if you're asking a kid to learn, or even an adult, if they want to learn something new and the limbic's getting all the blood flow, you don't have anything in your prefrontal cortex. You can't learn. You can't learn new content.
Yeah.
So you've got to be able to get, blood flow to that front part of the brain. And there's some really simple strategies to do that. And one is, high intensity movement. And it can be for just a couple seconds, having them pick something up and putting it down a few times before they go into the activity or something.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that last time, and how sometimes that physical activity, a little bit of exercise, can really help the brain. It's as you know, as we talked about on your podcast, I'm a hypnotherapist, and something that I really tell all my clients is, because very often someone might come to me because they want to stop smoking, or they can't sleep at night, or whatever it is. And we always end up talking about their exercise regimen and whether or not they have one, because the reality is if you're exercising, everything else will be better.
Oh, yeah.
Everything else will be better.
Yep.
It's not just about how you feel physically. It's how you feel emotionally.
100%.
And mentally, your clarity and everything. It all relates. And just that, even if it's just walking a little bit each day, that will make there's no way it makes anything worse. It'll make everything better.
It's huge. That's the biggest thing. You push those large amino acids into the muscles and you get that blood flow to the front of the brain. It makes a huge difference. My husband will be the first person to say that if I don't exercise during the day, I am not fit for human consumption.
Yeah, really.
He is mean.
Yeah.
So, you make it part of the lifestyle. But nowadays, because of the structure of households and stuff, kids don't get a lot of physical movement during the course of the day.
Right.
So, and
there's some schools which is great. Then he freaks out.
Kids aren't doing all that much. They may go up and down the slide a couple of times, but they're not breaking a sweat always.
Right.
So, and it's not consistent. So,
yeah.
They need more of it.
And you did talk to you spoke about nutrition.
Well, it was a
huge.
When you're in these school systems, do you see and this isn't something you probably address with the school system necessarily, I don't think, but do you see issues with what they're serving for lunches in public schools as not being optimum for?
For sure. I mean, the school districts are doing the best they can. It's a program, so they're given the items that they're given, and they have to serve those specific items. It's very regimented, but it is not a diet that is conducive to good brain health, unfortunately. And there is a common factor that all of my students, pretty much, I would say 99% of my students experience, and it is that they eat a processed Western diet.
Yeah.
And when we have the opportunity, we've had the opportunity to change some of our students' diets, and amazing things happen.
Yep.
Their verbal abilities improve. Their behavioral issues tend to decrease. Significant changes in mental health. I mean, we see huge changes when we can modify and work with their diets.
Yeah.
But that's not enough. I mean, diet is just one piece of the puzzle and everything. And it's hard. I mean, I'll be the first one to say that, I love having ice cream on Friday. I was at a meeting yesterday, and I had one of the administrators in the school bought me a donut, and I was like, oh my God, this is the best donut I've ever had. Shout out to Brothers Donuts in Franklin, New Hampshire. I was like, this donut is amazing. And I love sugar, but, I don't have it on a daily basis. And, and it's, and it's tough because there's so many of those things that help us hit those dopamine receptors. But they don't.
I forwarded the email.
They might help us in the short term for a couple of minutes, but they're not going to help us long term, especially in the long haul.
Right. People always talk too about. We hear this a lot on the show when we discuss social media. I mean, is it true that do you find that people's attention spans just generally are much shorter than they used to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure. And I mean, you can see that with social media and stuff too. I mean,
Yeah.
we've been doing social media stuff for very long. I mean, it's pretty short time.
It was 14.
But even since we started stuff a couple of
Yeah.
years ago, we've had to
Yeah.
shorten
Oh,
the
okay.
length of time
Shall
because we
we
don't get engagement
do
and things
that?
are as long as they were when we released them 2-3 years ago.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Even you can see even over the past couple of years, you can see
Yeah.
that difference.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And,
You take it now,
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah. You think about it, back
Yeah.
when like podcasts could be an hour and people would listen to them.
Right.
And certain people will.
Yeah.
Podcasts.
Sure. Yeah. Me too. Me too.
But younger people oftentimes won't. It's
Right.
20 minutes is the max. I
You
mean,
waiting
now
on
we're
the bed?
doing a video
Oh, yeah,
podcast
big
series
bed.
all on our book, and it's 20 minutes max. Like they cut me
You're wearing
at
a
20
disco
minutes.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, no, not having puffs, yeah.
Yeah. That's too bad.
Good, yeah, it's just one
I'll just have to ask you off.
Right. Right. Yeah. If you are just joining us, Dr. Bethany Bilodeau is here from the Behavior Boot Camp, and somebody had a question. Oh, somebody in the chat room made a comment about drinking water. That's probably another thing too. I guess you could kind of sort of file that under nutrition.
That
right?
would be
It
right.
is, yeah. And I mean, I've looked up a lot of the stats on it. I've read a lot of journal articles on water, and it's something like more than 85% of kids that are diagnosed with ADHD are actually severely dehydrated.
Really?
Sometimes,
Interesting.
yeah, and sometimes if you can increase their ability to consume water, you see that their symptoms improve significantly.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Angela said in the chat room, a lot of my students bring sugary snacks to school as their only nutrition.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some school districts that have great programs as far as providing fruits and vegetables and things like that. Additionally, so kids can have those at snacks and those sorts of times. When we work with those particular districts, we're really pushing those pieces of it, and saying, oh yeah, save that for later, save that for after school and that sort of thing. Because you see it too. I mean, if you have something super sugary and then they're going into a class, they're not going to be able to behave appropriately or even optimally to learn.
Right, right. I feel like we have a much broader problem in our culture too with just I don't understand why it's like you come into the world and it seems like right out of the gate everybody around you, like all these people who love you, your family and everyone, they can't wait to just fill you up with sugar and things that cause diabetes and junk food. It's strange, it's like you have your first birthday and here's cake.
Yeah.
It's bizarre if you really think about it logically. Like, why do we do that?
Yeah, a lot of our celebrations revolve around foods and stuff like that.
We're all taught. We're taught from a very young age that all these things that are so terrible for you, eat this.
Yeah. Well, you think back to antiquity. I mean, when people were starving and in a state of starvation and going days and days on time, not able to find food, the quickest energy source was sugar.
Yeah.
So anything with sugar has become this, celebratory item because of that, I think, over time. And we still view it that way. I mean, we have sugar and we're like,
right. Yeah, it's frustrating. What's the single biggest issue you see in schools? I know it's kind of a broad question, but I mean, is there something that really stands out that you see consistently in every school system you go into?
So for me, because I'm called in because a student is probably physically aggressive.
Yeah.
So that's what I see.
Yeah.
But that's the reason I'm being asked to come in. So I do a lot of tier 1, tier 2 trainings, and those are kids that are not aggressive, but might be refusing. I think the refusals are huge, refusing to participate, or they're walking out.
So kids who aren't violent, they're just saying, I'm just not gonna.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing that for professional development wise. That's what I'm training on most of the time.
Yeah.
Because usually, if they have a kid who's physically aggressive, they're referring them to an organization such as mine that specializes in working with kids like that. And I'm not necessarily training the school staff to deal with that. Sometimes I am, because there aren't agencies available to deal with those sorts of challenges. But it's probably the refusal and the avoidance is the big one that is getting reported. And those are simple things to address. I mean, typically right now, you think about from a learning perspective, how do people learn nowadays? Well, we can learn through repetition. Most individuals hate that. It sucks. We can learn through things that are super, super engaging, or we can learn through things that are new, novel. So the easiest way to engage, students at this point is really to either make it new, present the material so it's new, or make it super engaging.
Yeah.
Those two things, because most kids won't do repetition. You do still have some students that will engage in repetition, but you think back to your own school experiences, it's probably a lot through repetition. I know mine was a lot through repetition.
Right.
And I'd be writing it and be like, squirrel, sort of thing. So I had some great teachers, but I was not a great student. So, at all. And I think I'm in this field because I feel for kids. I know it's tough. I knew every hiding place in my elementary school. They'd say, Bethany, you need to go up to the library, the creepy library, and work up there. It was like one of those weird, like the ceilings were only like 7 feet tall.
Oh, really?
So it was a strange space. Yeah. So they'd be like, go upstairs and work. And I would just hide under one of the water fountains or in one of the cabinets going up there or something, and then eventually I'd go back to class and they'd be like, did you work up there? Oh yeah, I worked up there. Yep.
Right. Oh wow. Oh, that's funny. How many I know we talked about this before and I was surprised at how large the number was, but how many school districts are you working with at any given time?
So we tend to focus on 12 in a year. Primarily. Yeah. But I personally work with about 20 to 25 during a school year. Wow. So my reach is a little bit different because I do so much professional development. And I do about 100 trainings a year. So I'm in a lot more schools than my staff are in because they're in the same schools every day, whereas I'm going in and either doing professional development or I'm writing an assessment on a student that's struggling or something like that, or I'm doing a parent training, and then I'm out and I'm on to a different school and that sort of thing. So my time is very short in schools. So, and we rotate. We don't stay in the same schools every year. Like we really look at it as we need an exit plan. Mm-hmm. Once all of your Tier 3 students are at Tier 2, Tier 1. I mean, our goal is obviously to get them to Tier 1. Then we're out. We look at we have a wait list and we move on to the next school districts that need that support.
Yeah. So while you're going into the school, but you've got staff also going into the school. And so the staff,
great staff, yeah,
and they stay at that.
And our staff work with anywhere from 1 to 12 students in a day. Yeah, and and it's really providing safety and regulation training and all of that so that the students getting it and the staff are getting it so that they're learning those skills so that we can then. We have an exit plan and we are trying to get out. So it used to take us 1 to 3 years to get out of a school district. We now can get out of a school in as little as 3 to 6 months.
No kidding.
With the staff. So, and we go back to the school. Once all the students have transitioned off, I had one of my amazing staff last year. She had her school. She got all of her students were Tier 3. She had 9 students and she got, 7 of them to Tier 1 and 2 of them were at Tier 2. And we went back to the district in April and said, we need to pull her out. Like, you don't need that level of support there anymore. We can keep doing stuff, but you're better off putting us in one of your other schools in the district for the rest of the year to try to shore up some of the other issues, which works great. And we are constantly on that, and we're taking data all the time to see where we're at with that too.
Do you ever go into a school or a school district where you're kind of pleasantly surprised that things maybe aren't that bad? Like
often.
Like this one's going to be kind of easy?
Often, yeah.
That must be nice when that happens.
It's great when it happens, yeah. I mean, for me, the best thing that happens is when I go in and they're like, tell me how else I can do this. Give me some other strategies for this. And they want to learn because then I'm like, oh, I'm in and out super fast, because they're going to pick up the strategies and I can exit out, and a lot of times they're dealing with it where they're texting me or emailing me and saying, I tried this, what else? And I'll say, how about this, and this? And they're able to work on it in that way. When they're open to that, that's great. When I have to spend a lot of time convincing them that it's going to work, it takes more time.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Do you run into that a lot as well?
Oh, yeah.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
From the standpoint of those that are working with the students, the teachers, the paras, one thing that I hear is exhaustion.
Exhaustion all around across the board for everybody, the parents, the kids, the staff.
What kind of advice do you give people that are dealing, just in general, to deal with that exhaustion or to try and help them?
I think the big thing around exhaustion is that we are working ourselves to a state of exhaustion a lot of the time. So, implementing strategies that are going to help significantly with that, making sure that you're getting good quality sleep. But I really think it's giving yourself some downtime too. And a lot of people don't. They're so overscheduled.
Yep.
And it just happens. It's part of your life and everything. So I have one of my own personal children, like she signs herself up for everything.
Yeah.
And then my other child will be like, that's enough. I've got 2 nights of stuff. I just want to be home and have my time. And I'm like, you go, girl. Like, she knows her boundaries.
Yeah.
And she sets them and knows that it's too much, whereas my other one will, overschedule, and then she's, on top of it and everything else. But I also make them my own personal children. Like, we've meditated since they were, my littlest, I think, was 18 months when I started meditating with her. And,
oh, wow.
And so we meditate every night as a family.
Wow.
My husband sleeps during the meditation.
Yeah.
He falls asleep every night during the meditation. But my girls meditate. We meditate every night, and
Excellent.
that is part of what my youngest daughter will tell you. That is the biggest thing that has helped her with quality of sleep, that has helped her with her anxiety, and has significantly helped her when she starts to feel sad.
Oh,
So
wow.
those are huge, which
Yeah.
you look at the research, I mean, honestly, the meditation, it creates those hormones in the brain that help to combat all of those pieces and everything. So significantly helps with that. And we're very specific about what we're meditating about, whether we're reviewing our day, whether we are meditating because we want to think about something that we feel happens and we're mentally rehearsing that scenario, whatever it is, we're very specific about our meditations.
Yeah.
What do you tell somebody that says, oh, I can't meditate?
Everybody.
My brain doesn't stop. I can't meditate.
I feel your pain. If you know me, you know that I'm like, meow, meow.
I hear that. Yeah. We talked about that when I was on your podcast too, because I hear that all the time too as a hypnotherapist.
Yeah. Everybody can. You start with very small components of time. I have every one of my students tells me that when I start with them, because we start with mindfulness and we work up to meditation over time. We have to do safety and regulation first, but we get to the meditation. And kids, students that have said, I can't do this. This is stupid. I don't like it, and then a couple months later I'm in and they'll be like, Dr. B, are we going to meditate today? And I'm like, yep, we are. So they get to that and they'll say, oh, I really need to meditate today. I have a math test and I've got to be ready, or I've got to, get up in front of the class and speak about this project that I'm doing. I need to meditate. And I'll be like, okay, let's do it. And they get themselves, into a point where they really look forward to it. And they tell me also that's one of the biggest things that helps their quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. Sarah in the chat room too was asking, great question. Can you explain the tiers? You mentioned like tier 1, tier 2.
Yeah, good question. So tier 1 is really just a student who might be just struggling a little bit in class, having some trouble paying attention, maybe talking to their neighbor or blurting things out, doing that sort of thing. A tier 2 kid is probably a student who's getting up and leaving class, using a lot of bathroom breaks, maybe refusing to do work in the classroom, those sorts of things, isn't producing much academically, especially if they're not getting one-on-one support. That's a tier 2. Tier 3 is your student who's probably not in your classroom a lot of the time.
Okay.
It might not be in the classroom at all. Those are tier 3 kids. I tend to get tier 3 kids if they are physically aggressive. A tier 3 kid who is not physically aggressive, more in shutdown mode and stuff. Sometimes I'll get that student, especially if the community around them is really invested in getting them to a better point. But it really depends on the student. So the difference is that students who are physically aggressive are obviously disruptive to the school community.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why we get called in so quickly versus the other population. We work just as much with the other population, especially with parents, but it's not as high a need because it's not disrupting and not putting a risk to the school community as a whole.
Do you have any advice for parents who are dealing with this? Obviously not in the school, but parents who are dealing with this at home, physically aggressive kids.
Yeah.
And they don't know what to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, some big things are, does the kid feel safe? And do you feel safe? If you don't feel safe, then you're not going to be able to convey safety to the other person. The stance of safety, I talk about that all the time. There's a certain way to stand. Your feet are about shoulder width apart. Your hands are in front of you. Your thumbs are up because that conveys confidence to the other person non-verbally, even though they don't realize that. Your elbows are slightly out, but you're not in an arms akimbo sort of stance because you're not trying to convey authority. You're trying to convey safety. So there is a slight differentiation with that. You're tilting your head slightly to the left, and the reason why is that conveys empathy, and lifting the chin a little bit because that also conveys that you're paying attention, that you're attentionally attuned. So the stance of safety, huge. Usually if I just move into that stance when I have a youth that is, really agitated and could be physically agitated, destroying property or whatever, they start to calm down and they end up usually moving into crying. If you're a parent and you're home with your kid, oftentimes, and your kid is getting physically aggressive, oftentimes, one, remove the trigger. So if the trigger is, I want that candy bar, and you said no, and the candy bar is still on the counter, you got to get whatever the trigger is. Same thing. I want my phone, and the phone is still sitting on the counter, or I want my Xbox. Block it. Either physically stand in front of it so that they can't see it, or put it away. Because anytime they see that item, they're going to trigger again.
Right.
It's just going to re-escalate the person over again.
Yeah.
So get rid of it. Provide some sort of simple distraction once they start to come down a little bit, but you've got to give them a moment to come down. If you know your child is not going to be physically aggressive towards you, oftentimes a hug will bring them out of it because that calms the limbic system. So if you're at home, a lot of schools are non-huggers, so I wouldn't say to do that at school.
Yeah.
But if you're at home, grab your kid and hug them, or say, do you need a hug? Do you just need a hug right now? And, pull them in and give them a hug. And usually then you can say, hey, let's go do something, distract them for a minute, and then say, what are some solutions? What are some things we can do differently?
Yeah.
And move them forward from that. Water is also a great remedy for this.
Oh, I remember you talking about this.
Get them in the tub, get them in the shower. If they're open to that, water will help to de-escalate them for sure as far as that stuff goes. So get them, involved in water somehow. You can get them to do that. But comfort items work really well too. If you can't get them into a shower, get a blanket and put it over them or something like that, or help them get to a smaller, more confined space. If they're standing in the living room and that's your biggest room of the house, they're going to keep screaming and yelling and having big motions because the space is big. Their body has to fill the space.
That makes sense. Okay.
Get them into the kitchen, in the bathroom, wherever. Get them into a smaller space. That will help significantly. Okay. So the more you can shrink the space, the more safe they're going to feel.
Yeah.
At schools, I'll often be like, I'll say to the kid, I'll just point under the table. Like, you want to go over? And they'll just move under the table, and then I'll hand them a blanket. And then after a few minutes, I'll say, you ready to come out? And we'll do a focus activity, and then I get them back onto the academics. Okay. And the same thing works really well at home. Like you can say to them, you want to go, into a cabinet or something like that. Like all kids love that secret room concept. Yeah, I want to build a secret room. Just be like, open the cabinet, pull out your dishes and stuff for a second, and be like, why don't you go in there for a moment, and they'll feel. They'll regroup, and then they come out, and then you can do some processing with them. It's really good. You need to do processing with them so that you can talk about what they can do better the next time, because you certainly don't want a 25-year-old crawling into a cabinet when they get upset.
Right.
Not that would I haven't heard any stories of that happening, but
yeah, we don't even like it when our cats crawl into our cabinets. But maybe that's why they, because they like small
confined
small
spaces. It's the same reason why dogs like small confined spaces and everything too. I mean, it's I have a lot of kids who will go into their beds When they don't feel safe, they go under their beds.
Yep.
You know, and I'll tell parents, make it as a safe place.
Right.
If they're feeling stressed or you can see that they're starting to get agitated, say, hey, why don't you go lay under your bed for a little bit? Here's some coloring, or here's some this to do. Teens do it with clothing, typically. So if they're getting stressed and they're starting to get agitated with you, hand them a sweatshirt.
Okay.
So you put the hood up.
Yeah.
Or hand them a winter hat so you can put the hat on. Or
Yeah.
something like that. You know, that's why people love to wear hats. They feel safer
Yeah.
with them on and everything. It helps to stimulate that vagus nerve and also helps to feel more confined, so they feel a little bit safer and everything. So,
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Dr. B, the time goes so quickly. We're already approaching the top of the hour, so I want to make sure before we run out of time that our listeners know how to reach you, how to learn more about the Behavior Boot Camp and the podcast, of course, and anything else you want to make sure everybody knows about.
Yeah, so the easiest way to get a hold of us is going to www.thebehaviorbootcamp.com. And we're also on the social media platforms under that name as well. And everything, we'd love to see you. We hold the free webinar every Thursday, and usually one of our staff, one of our behaviorists actually mans that. So if you're having challenges at home, if you're having challenges at school, whatever it may be, feel free to go onto our website, sign up for that webinar and jump on, and a behaviorist will help get you through some of those things, and they'll also give you some strategies. So they have a planned content for that time, but that's really for people who are struggling with certain scenarios that need to work through things.
Excellent. By the way, I do want to read this comment too. Angela posted, I've learned through Behavior Boot Camp how body stance is so important. Had no idea how much body language can speak so much louder than words.
Oh, thank you so much,
excellent.
Angela.
So, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Angela. Very good. Well, Dr. B, it's always a pleasure.
It's always great to be here.
Yep.
Thanks so much for having me, you guys. It's good to see you both.
We really appreciate you. And Jenny, before we go too, you want to plug your website and remind everybody of what you're doing this coming week?
Yeah.
Shout out. No, you can go to jencoffey.com, JENNCOFFEY.com. Check out all my artwork. Keep up with my activism.
Yeah.
And looking forward to writing up what it was like going to the White House to speak next week.
Yes.
Big things coming.
Absolutely.
But don't forget to check out the Mosaic Art Collective right here in the Queen City.